Welcome to the Future of Entrepreneurship and how to 10x the ecosystem and create exponential startups. We're really thrilled about the audience that we have today. We want to talk about how things will look like in the next 3, 5, 10 years. How will exponential technologies affect our daily activities? How will we be able to connect with others? What impact will artificial intelligence, genomics, 3D, 4D printing, CRISPR, drones, etc. have in our lives? How can companies jump in, and how can governments make sure they're not left behind? How can NGOs leverage the present and the future? And how can entrepreneurs continue to build a better reality for us all? I'm very excited to have in the same room and the same conversation for the first time some of the forgers of the present and the future of the entrepreneurial ecosystem worldwide. So I've been sharing with my kids. I want to share this with you. I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, and they started their first startup when they were 5 by investing their allowances, and they were very curious about what was going to happen here. And I'm pretty sure that you guys are going to understand what I shared with them, because when they asked me who was going to be at the event, I just said, the guy who started everything, the guy that brought high tech to the formula, the guy who blew it up, the guy who made it global movement, the guy who's evangelizing in basically all the schoolers in the world, and the gal that transformed Latin America. And I'm sure you're pretty understanding really easily who I'm talking about. We were overwhelmed by so many emails from the audience saying that our panelists are their heroes, that their example and their books changed their lives, that meeting them is literally in their bucket lists. And by the way, me personally too. But it's always nice to share the sentiment with so many in so different continents and in so different places. As you'll see when I share a little bit of each of them, they're very much alike. I even think they might be wizards. They're brilliant, they're restless, they have a clear purpose, they're resilient, and I'm pretty sure they have known how to hack time. Hopefully before the end of the day, they'll share with us how they were able to pull off so much stuff in so little time. I'm going to go alphabetically. I'll start with Adriana Tortajada. Adriana has been building bridges between the private initiative and the academic sector, the non-for-profits, the entrepreneurs, and the public sector for more than 20 years. She has pioneered in early-stage funding, gender equality, deep tech venturing, and high-impact startups. She has been a relevant activist and a stakeholder in the development of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Americas by working closely with the Startup Nation Summit, Pacific Alliance, the Mexico-US Entrepreneurship and Innovation Council, or MUSEIC, and turning Mexico basically into the entry point of the entrepreneurial global community with more than 60 countries. She's the Global Executive Director of the Entrepreneurship of Santander Bank. Adriana, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you everyone for joining us. And what a pleasure and an honor to share with all of these cracks in these panels. So thank you for, having me here. And what an honor to share with all of you. And actually I'm agree with you, are part of our heroes and our mentors and the inspiration behind all the things that we have achieved, without knowing that we're being pioneers and creating bigger stuff for the majority. So to start talking about the future of entrepreneurship, we definitely must start talking about the new purpose of the entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystems. So the world is more connected than ever, but it's urgent to innovate and look how with entrepreneurship we can work in a very collaborative way and reducing inequality and creating new opportunities. We need to think about how to not leave anyone behind, as you were mentioned already. And this is a huge challenge, but present a new approach based on social and business science to describe a new model, the complex dynamics of interaction between the actors of an economic ecosystem, focusing on entrepreneurial in particular. It enables the identification of the type of actors that constitute such an economic ecosystem, like, of course, the roles they play and the value they contribute to the ecosystem strengthening as well. So organizations, public policymakers, educators, information generation, and of course, entrepreneurs, among other type of actors, can take their role to the next level in order to intervene strategically and contribute to the development of the ecosystem itself. It can be easy for, ecosystem scholars, actors, and entrepreneurs themselves to get lost in the glamour of develop and world renewed, ecosystem. And of course, everyone to copy. But there's a huge opportunity of the development, underdeveloped economies where the financial infrastructures are not abandoned. And the reality of the needs of these countries and emerging economies, and even in some non-innovative based development economies, is that the resources tend to be limited. And when economic resources and infrastructures are lacking, the most valuable tool for developing an ecosystem is collaboration. So therefore, comprehending the dynamics of interaction, roles, and values becomes really necessary to talk about the future of entrepreneurship. And if we are not able to understand our role and the value we can contribute, we will hardly be able to achieve significant changes in our environment and achieve the 10x of our ecosystem and create exponential startups. So I invite everyone to reflect about which is the role that it's playing. If we are playing an articulator role, enabler, a linker, a knowledge generator, a promoter, or even a community builder. And this is based on the evolution of the ecosystem models that MIT D Lab just launched recently. And we need to think perhaps actually we are, playing many roles at today, We can talk about the new launching that we're going to face everyone about the knowledge generation, enable, articulator. Everyone that are here have played different roles in our different paths and different momentums in our careers. But I do believe that, reflecting these take us to the evolution of, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. The future of entrepreneurship must focus and support startups that are born global and create solutions for our biggest and urgent problems and adapt to demographic changes, of course, to create a lasting social and economic impact for millions of people worldwide. And to support social welfare, we can start from understanding the entrepreneurial ecosystem for a sustainable development. So not just established business help society get through a crisis, it is a new generation of up and coming entrepreneurs who will be creating innovative, ensuring future sustainability and building safe, equitable, and strong economies that can benefit everyone. So I just want to, wrap it up. And I see two main key trends shaping this future of entrepreneurship. And one, of course, definitely by digital, agility, resilience, and speed. And of course, it's certainly becoming easier to run like a global entrepreneur. So the entire model for global entrepreneurship is evolving at high speed. So the future will be defined by digital. The World Economic Forum Futures of Jobs survey finds raising demand for skills such as active learning, stress tolerance, and flexibility. And we have already seen how companies that move quickly during the crisis had a strategic advantage over competitors because they can work, with millions on virtual and continue to provide exceptional service gained by local customers. So while not all these shifts are new, the acceleration we have seen through pandemia is, according to McKinsey, businesses that once mapped a digital strategy many years ahead have been able to scale those same initiatives in a matter of days or weeks. So the speed of change has been phenomenal. And second key trend, it's a new age of diverse and location-independent entrepreneurship. The world is entering an exciting new age of entrepreneurship, That means more women, more young people, and more entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds are launching solutions independent of location and serviced by remote, workers. So the new generation is successful entrepreneurs are digital nomads already. This diverse entrepreneurship is fed by an enormous talent of pool, the huge demographic bonus, all the things that are happening in Asia and of course in Latin America and Caribbean. And of course, those ones that are so-called demographic dividend, they understand how the things are evolving, and we can address a lot of the SDGs, such eradicating hunger, ensuring healthy lives, promoting education and lifelong learning, creating employment, and improving social protection and reducing inequality. Because there's a huge part of the world as well that's getting to elderly population, the expectation of life is increasing, and a lot of mobility, and of course, a urban people that is moving from cities. So the different trends can offer a great opportunities to create exponential startups. So, to close in my intervention, as we look beyond the pandemic, it is clear, the entrepreneurship will not return to what it was. It will be even better. Future entrepreneurship has the potential to be the ultimate global equalizer, creating many more opportunities for many more people. So it is important not just to teach or guide entrepreneurship, but to embed it in recovery mood and reset what has gone before. It is how we work to discover and fund and support the next generation of diverse and exponential startups which will drive long-term recovery. So for me, those are the key factors and the key trends that definitely are already transforming the future of entrepreneurship nowadays. So thank you, Pedro, back to you.
Thank you, Adriana. Very interesting view, especially about globality and new generations. I'm pretty sure the other guests are going to have a lot to comment about that. I appreciate it. Thank you. I would like now to introduce Bob Dorf. Bob is one of the top 5 lean startup and customer development experts on the planet. Thank you for being with us. He co-authored the globally best-selling Startup Owner's Manual, or what some entrepreneurs call the Bible. Bob founded 7 startups, 2 home runs, 2 base hits, and 3 tax losses. More than 30 investments delivered, 7 IPOs, and 6 disasters. Bob founded Number One at 22, which he grew to 150 when he sold. He also did marketing 1-to-1, an Inc. 500 company, zoomed to 450 people, and 110 million valuation in 7 years. He has trained and coached startups in 52 countries. Bob, we're really honored to having you here, and also being a very active participant in the forging of what we're talking about today, the entrepreneurial ecosystem and everything that has been happening for the last more than 10 years in entrepreneurs worldwide. What would be your take about the future of entrepreneurship, Bob?
Oh, that's a. I hope some inspired entrepreneur has the pillow concession for this speech, because it's such a powerful question, and so I think important to the future of the global economy, which is certainly in no small measure being redefined through the tragedy of COVID, that has also got some bright spots in it of people seeking to work, on their own more and explore independent alternatives, particularly in many cases where they don't involve commuting. But as Adriana, who I remember meeting some years ago now in Mexico, where she drove the earliest days of entrepreneurship, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And this esteemed group, I'm almost embarrassed to be with. They're so successful in driving this message and driving entrepreneurship in so many ways. But I'd like to, instead of talking about it from the global perspective, I'd like to, being a customer development guy, talk about it from the perspective of our customer. Who is our customer? It is the entrepreneur, because without them, there's no movement. And an entrepreneur, in my mind, doesn't need to be striving to build a unicorn or a massive exit or an IPO to be an entrepreneur. And in fact, many of the skills that we need to cultivate in our entrepreneurs are the skills that we can't teach: courage, initiative, decision-making, risk tolerance, and perhaps most important of all, tenacity. And when we find those skills, those inner strengths in a person, whether it's an indigent person in the mountains and the Andes in Colombia, or at Columbia University or business school, they need those ingredients, the non-teachable ingredients, first. But the second thing they need more than anything, that I think especially everyone on this panel has devoted much of their professional lives to, is they need glue. They need a network. They need a robust ecosystem that can catch them and teach them the teachable skills and guide them to figuring out their business model, whether it's a taco truck or the next, Facebook or Google. Because an entrepreneur, by definition, is someone with the courage to go out and do something boldly on his or her own, and to take the risks in exchange for the rewards. And the risks and rewards are by no means entirely monetary. When I left a very good six-figure job at the age of 22 in 1972, just a few years ago, to start my first business, I didn't know what an exit was. I didn't really know what an investor was, because nobody would be crazy enough to invest in a 22-year-old who's going to walk away from a senior job at a major radio station in New York. And I go back from time to time to the definition of an entrepreneur, which to me, the best one I've ever heard is: an entrepreneur is a person brave enough to jump off a mountain and figure out how to build at least an MVP of an airplane before he or she hits the bottom of the mountain. And that's what we do. We figure stuff out, we make stuff happen, but we can't do it alone. And to me, the heart of entrepreneurial success lies in the ecosystem. And I've been very proud to have spent a ton of time back as early as 2012, in the very first days of entrepreneurship in Colombia, where I spent weeks in workshops and months in workshops and classrooms in Bogota and Medellin and all over the country, finding entrepreneurs with the simplest, most basic ideas to the more exotic enterprise software ideas, and catching them at their level and plugging in the missing ingredients in their potential for success along the way. And also importantly, and I think a big part of why we're here today, giving them a roadmap, a methodology to follow, whether it's the lean startup or the new one or any of the others in between. It's a rigor, a discipline, but not a follow this map or fall off the cliff. It's a roadmap with sort of bumper guards on both sides, giving them the room to try and to fail and to learn from the failures and so forth. And we
definitely, Bob. And I think you're hitting a very important topic, because especially when you have the courage, but you have no support system, I think it's super relevant that you as an entrepreneur start looking around for different ways in which you can start learning these new skills and reaching out to people that might support you on that journey. And I'm really happy to have Jeff here, because Jeff, you've been traveling all over the world, supporting entrepreneurs and building a culture and getting everyone excited about the new reality that we can build together. Jeff Hoffman is an entrepreneur, a proven CEO, worldwide motivational speaker, best-selling author, Hollywood film producer, a producer of a Grammy-winning jazz album, and an executive producer of an Emmy Award-winning television show. He has been the founder of multiple startups. He has been the CEO of both public and private companies, and he has served as a senior executive in many capacities. Jeff has been part of a number of well-known successful startups, including Priceline and Booking.com, Ubit. He is the chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network and supports the UN and similar organizations internationally on economic growth initiatives and entrepreneurship programs. Jeff, I'd love to hear your views. I'm pretty sure that you've been traveling like more than 100 countries a year for the last few years. I mean, that's crazy. You've basically been everywhere. What's your take in what's going to happen in the next 3, 5, 10 years in terms of entrepreneurial communities?
Sure, and thank you again very much for having me. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving on Friday for North Africa. So travel has started again. I am continuing, and I want to say in my probably my two prime roles now as chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, we are on the ground building support systems and ecosystems around entrepreneurs. We're now in 190 countries, and as the founding board member of the Unreasonable Group, we are out finding the world's best entrepreneurs, solving the world's biggest problems. And today we have 289 companies in that portfolio of entrepreneurs solving problems aligned with the UN SDGs. And we've raised $6.6 billion to fund entrepreneurs around the world. We've positively impacted, we just found out, 720 million lives now. So in that process, here's the lesson I've learned. If you want to build exponential companies, if you want to solve the world's greatest problems, the scarcest resource in the world is not money. It's not financial capital, it's human capital. Everybody talks about needing funding to grow. What you need are the world's smartest people. They are far more powerful than money, and funding groups of average people does not yield results. Underfunding rock stars yields results. So if human capital is the key to making the world a better place to live, and human capital is the key to building exponential companies, that's how we were able to build several multi-billion-dollar companies that I was blessed enough to be a part of. We have to get to those people. And one good thing that came out of the pandemic is the whole planet went online way more than they were just 2 short years ago. And I just want to share a quick story of what it looks like, because I kind of want to redefine my thought on the future of entrepreneurship is it will become more about human capital. It will become, instead of spreadsheets, we'll focus on the power of the human standing in front of us, not the dollars on the bottom of their spreadsheet. We'll be looking for the next great geniuses and innovators out there, not just the next exit strategy. And we've got to get this education to I'll use the old term, the long tail of entrepreneurship. And I kind of want to rename entrepreneurship. I wish we could just call it self-determination, because entrepreneurship has been very tainted with a tech halo, an exit halo, a VC and a money halo, instead of the real shine it should have, which is people making the world better where they live, and frequently in a broader area around them, sometimes the whole planet. And I'll just give you a quick example of that. That I think about every day. People say, Jeff, you spent your whole life scaling companies. And I tell them, yeah, now I'm trying to scale hope. I'm trying to scale access to intelligence and access to inspiration and get it everywhere. And I was in the dirt of Cambodia along the shores of the Mekong with some young Cambodians who have never heard of, they don't even know what Stanford University is, to be honest. They certainly don't know what entrepreneurship is. They've never read any of the books that any of us have written. They're not part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. It reaches a relatively small percent of the population, yet they live in horrible conditions and they want to make the world better. And we had a discussion about what entrepreneurship is. It's self-determination. It's figuring out how to make things better where you are by solving a problem using a set of business skills, which are coincidentally called entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is not a job, right? It's a tool set and a mindset. And I stayed up all night with them in the dirt along the side of the river. And when we were done, somebody had fished a fish out of that water and asked me to eat it. And I wasn't about to touch something that looked like diseased water. And in that conversation, we discovered that a problem in their community, these people couldn't feed themselves, but the tourist restaurants in Cambodia, frog legs is a big dish. But all the restaurants stopped serving it, even though the tourists wanted it, because frogs were catching some kind of disease from the contaminated water and diners were dying. And I sat down with these young Cambodians and said, you want to be entrepreneurs? It starts right now. And they didn't say we want to be entrepreneurs. They said we want to make things better and feed our families, which turns out is what every human being is actually trying to do. By the time we were done, these kids got a massive blue tarp, rope, a bunch of trees. We tarred the tarp to trees everywhere. We got clean water supply. We got nutrients and clean food. They created a frog farm. Bottom line, they deliver frogs on bicycles, clean frogs, fresh raised, fresh water, fresh nutrients to every restaurant that they can get to in Cambodia. And they've now been able to buy houses for everybody in their village because they solved a problem using the mindset of entrepreneurship. So I'll close by saying this. The future of entrepreneurship is access to talent, and it's incumbent upon everybody on this webinar today to figure out how we push the skill set of entrepreneurship to the people who need it most and read about it the least. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to share.
Thank you, Jeff. It was really exciting to hear the story about those entrepreneurs, and I guess Peter can share a bit more about exciting stories about entrepreneurs. You are, I mean, one of a kind. You're one of the world's 50 greatest leaders, according to Fortune. From a recent note that I just got, you're creditor of a bet with Carlos Slim related to Elon Musk launching before 2025. That's hilarious, by the way. I'm the founder and executive chairman of the X Prize Foundation. He's also the executive founder of Singularity University. Peter has started over 20 companies in the areas of longevity, space, venture capital, and education. He's co-founder of Bold Capital Partners, a venture fund with $250 million investing in exponential technologies, and co-founder and vice chairman of Cellularity, a cellular therapeutics company. He is a New York Times best-selling author of 3 books, Abundance, Bold, and The Future is Faster Than You Think. We're so proud to having you here and learning about what you've done. I think that especially the undertaking that you're heading and about spreading out the access to exponential technologies and just changing mindsets about abundance, it's phenomenal. What can you share about what might happen in the next 5-10 years?
Thank you, Pedro. Let me start with my own definition of entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur is someone who finds a problem and solves it. It's basically that basic. And I think that we're entering a period of time where entrepreneurs are able to really scale and take on problems like never before. In fact, I have more faith in entrepreneurs solving the world's grand challenges than I do governments. Entrepreneurs are willing to take extraordinary risks because they're driven by passion. Salim and I call it a massive transformative purpose, and they don't know any better, or they have nothing to lose. So they'll try crazy ideas, and sometimes those crazy ideas are hard, and sometimes they're impossible, but sometimes they work. So we're entering a period of time right now where every entrepreneur has access to more resources than heads of state had just decades ago. You know, they're more empowered to solve the problems they desire than any time ever in human history. We're seeing a massive abundance of capital. right? We hit all-time capital highs in terms of venture capital, deployable capital, crowdfunding, all of these every year in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, in a pandemic, more money was available than any time ever in human history. So there's an abundance of capital. At the same time, the tools that allow entrepreneurs to do what they do are demonetizing, right? So, a good 3D printer, a decade ago would have cost you tens and, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now it can be done for a few $1,000s or $100. Sequencing a human genome cost $100 million. Now it's approaching $100. So we're demonetizing all of the tools that entrepreneurs need or have, just like we're on a digital connection, which 20 years ago, having this digital connection would have cost a huge amount of capital. Now it's free, right, on FaceTime or on Zoom. And so it's the barrier to entry, the ability for someone to come up with a crazy idea to solve a problem and find their partners and take a shot at solving it is massive. It's never any time more available in history, and the only time better than today is going to be tomorrow. So I'm a huge believer in entrepreneurship as the means to make the world a better place. People talk about all the dystopian futures about AI and robotics and all of that other stuff, taking our jobs and destroying the world. I don't believe that. What history has shown us is that we tend to be using these technologies, some order of magnitude greater to make the world a better place, not to disrupt the planet. So my mission to all entrepreneurs is find your passion and purpose in life, and then go for it. You can find your partners. The old saying, it's find someone to go on the journey with you. And today we're living in a world where, as I think Jeff said, it doesn't. We don't have borders. If I can find the best person on the planet in the middle of India or China or Vietnam, that's amazing. I don't care where they live. I just care about, do we have an equal passion, and are we going to both commit and work as hard? So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Peter. That was inspiring. I'd like to welcome on stage Roberto Alvarez. He's the co-founder of 3 tech companies, a global connector, early stage investor, and an active entrepreneur in projects in Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa. He's a venture partner at Selder Capital and an executive director of the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils, a 30-plus countries global network that gathers corporations, universities, government agencies, and industry organizations. Roberto, you've also been in touch from a few conversations that we've had with a lot of policymakers. So if possible, I'd love to hear in your time also the take about not only the entrepreneur themselves, but also the system and what's around the entrepreneur.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for having me. I was trained as an engineer, and back in the 80s and early 90s, I had no clue what an entrepreneur, a startup, an investment was. And that was down in Brazil. And I think there's a fundamental change that has happened. And it's a generational change in some way. And some of the folks who are here are very important in that context. Entrepreneurship is more accessible. It's codified. Innovation is more a science than an art to various aspects. So I think there's a major shift here. And there's a realization that entrepreneurs are fundamental. So entrepreneurs are those who create the future. And I think that people in policy have been realizing that. People in government have been realizing that. Maybe what they don't know is how to accelerate entrepreneurship. 3 quick comments here, Peter, that I want to add. First is that entrepreneurship is broad. There are different types of ventures. There are different types of companies. There are different types of entrepreneurs. And I think Bob was mentioning tenacity. And I have a friend in Brazil who maybe is watching this, Fernando, and we co-invested together in a tech company. And Fernando was saying to me, hey, the founders there, they're like cockroaches. They can survive the toughest situations. So entrepreneurs are capable of doing that. But also Jeff mentioned social capital, and I'll be back to that, because access to capital is fundamental, but I cannot agree more than that, social capital. And probably one of the things that we have in the globe, including from a policy perspective, is that we need to address entrepreneurship full spectrum. It's about exponential companies. It's about companies that are into hard, deep tech, but also the mama and pop shops and at the corner. So supporting those guys is fundamental for a society perspective. And I think that we should also have that in mind. The other aspect related to this, and that entrepreneurship is broad, is use the resource that we have today in the globe is human potential. So we have smart people all over the globe. We have entrepreneurial people all over the globe, but we are not providing them the opportunities to flourish. So addressing that is critical. This is something that your new venture with OpenExo can address. This is critical for all innovation ecosystems. So the other comments about where. So maybe what we should talk, or a critical thing about entrepreneurship, is where are we going to do that? And there's a tension, but also various opportunities related to global and local. And around the corner, entrepreneurship on the metaverse, entrepreneurship on space, so on and so forth. We have huge asymmetries around the globe, huge asymmetries. Access to capital, that's fundamental. But also, let's say, access to social capital. Local innovation ecosystems are growing. We know, for instance, thanks to Jen and the work that Jeff has been steering, that we have several innovation ecosystems maturing around the globe. But still today, most of those emerging ecosystems, people there, they don't have access to Salim Ismail. They don't have access to Peter Diamandis. They don't have access to Adriana Tortajada, to Bob, to Pedro. So asymmetries in access and social capital persist today. And that is very important. And in addition to that, depending on the type of venture, you mentioned Solar Capital, our investment fund based out of New York, investing in space startups. We're investing only in the United States, not in Brazil, where for instance, I come from, because those are different environments. So developing, I would say, a deep understanding on local realities, but also seeing the potential to create value through global connections is critical. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed, like by entrepreneurs, by governments, so on and so forth. Like very quick ideas to finish here, Peter, and maybe about the things that you're doing. And I think that creating global platforms that could provide not just the knowledge, but the connections and the support, like let's say the virtual builder that you're creating, is fundamental. And I would finish with one idea. Probably the most transformational thing that we could do to drive entrepreneurship and exponential, let's say, ventures, is to disrupt geography.
I like the way you wrapped up, because disrupting geography is something super relevant, especially when you're talking about inefficiencies of a global market. So I couldn't agree more, and it's an interesting take, because so far there have been many people discussing the possibility, but we haven't seen any tangible actions focused on that. Thank you for the first round, Roberto. And finally, to close, we want to invite Salim Ismail to the main stage. Salim has been building disruptive digital companies as a serial entrepreneur since the early 2000s. As a prolific speaker, he gives more than 150 talks a year to audiences of all sizes around the world. I do apologize, we only give you 5 minutes today. He has been profiled across a vast array of media outlets, including the New York Times, Bloomberg, Businessweek, Fortune, Forbes, Wired, Vogue, and BBC. Salim is a sought-after strategist and renowned technology entrepreneur who built and sold his company to Google and the author of Exponential Organizations, a book, as well as Peter's and Bob's that changed my life. I'm so happy to have you here, Salim. What do you think is going to happen with exponential organizations, exponential startups, and the next decade of the entrepreneurial ecosystem? You're muted.
Peter and I often talk about this. This is the best and most exciting time to be alive. In fact, Peter is convinced we must be living in a simulation because it's just too interesting, right? And there's I think the next 10, 20, 30 years of our world is going to dictate the next few hundred, because we're in one of those massive civilization level inflections. And the only people that can really navigate us from one place to the other is entrepreneurs, because they will go and try to hack away at a problem with the tenacity that Bob mentions and never stop until they get it done. And it requires that level of grit to really solve these problems, which are pretty fundamental, because every institution by which we run the world needs to transform, and so on. Now, the legacy of the last 100 and 150 years is now transitioning. It turns out in the last 50 years, 100% of net new jobs came from startups, because big companies have been getting bigger but more efficient. And 100% of job growth has come from startups. So there's a future there. And as we enter a realm where the access to technology is cheaper and cheaper, things become incredibly exciting. And I love the work that Jeff is doing, traveling all around the world, evangelizing this and showing people that this is a real path. Because in most parts of the world, the idea of being an entrepreneur, I grew up in India, and it was inconceivable at the time to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even understand the concept until I was at university in Canada, and I took a course on entrepreneurship, and somebody says, oh, you can actually build a business. And so having that awareness now go global, essentially the possibilities and potential and the track record of Silicon Valley can now be done anywhere in the world. You know, the story that Jeff tells in Cambodia is amazing. My favorite example is, look up Vega Innovations. This is the world's fastest and highest performing electric supercar. Okay, and it's being designed and built in Sri Lanka, that hotbed of automotive innovation. If you can design the world's fastest electric supercar on an island in the middle of the tropics, you can do anything anywhere, right? And now it's just a question of mindset and really going for that tenacity and gumption. And how big of a problem do you dare to solve? What's incredibly exciting to me is you take Elon Musk, right? His methodology is very simple. He looks at a technology that's growing exponentially, whether it's solar energy, batteries, whatever. Where will it be in 10 years? And let's build a company to intercept it in a 10-year period, neural links, whatever. And so that's a pretty easy formula if you have the gumption to ride that curve 10 years and then have the grit to follow through. We are now seeing thousands of entrepreneurs, hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs all over the world completely following this model and operating with no fear. My favorite recent example is Vitalik Buterin, 18 years old, growing up in Toronto, ignores his professors. And now we have Ethereum, which as of 10 minutes ago was a $504 billion ecosystem in 6 years. Peter and I just interviewed the CEO of Thrasio, which is a startup. It's doing about a $2 billion revenue run rate in 2 years. Okay, I'm just going to repeat that. $2 billion in 2 years, all done online. So this is what's possible today. You can build this. And we call this now the decade of the EXO because we've now unlocked and we have a solid track record of seeing how exponential companies can be built. The formula works very well, and anybody can pick up the formula, listen to folks like on this panel, and then go build a startup. The cost of trying becomes really low. And it's going to take that large number. My favorite example of analogy for startups is like turtle eggs. A turtle will lay 200 eggs on the beach, and only 150 of them hatch, and then only 100 get to the water because the birds are eating them and the animals are eating them. And when you get to the water, the fish are eating them, and only 5 will get to the bottom of the ocean and breed new turtles. But the challenge for venture capitalists and investors, you look at the original nest, how do you tell which 5 are going to get to the bottom? It's a very chaotic path. So it's a numbers game. The more entrepreneurs we have out there, the more incredible startups we will have, the more problems we'll be able to solve. And so I get incredibly excited when I see tens of thousands of entrepreneurs having now access to the same wisdom, insight, clarity, experience, and lessons from the folks that have started all of this craze over the last few years, many of them on this panel. So it's a very exciting time. We call this the decade of the EXO because we can now build scalable companies in a way that we never could before. And the last thing that's super interesting about this new breed of companies is that we learned in the last 10, 15 years how to get customers at low cost, and we could drop the cost of demand. What exponential organizations have figured out is how do you drop the cost of supply, right? If you think about Airbnb, the cost of adding a room to their inventory is near zero. Whereas if you're Hyatt, you have to build a hotel. And so now we have dozens of entrepreneurs entering legacy environments with no cost of demand and low cost of supply, which means the market cap explodes. And that's why the valuations are so crazy. That's why it's so exciting to be an entrepreneur today. And Pedro, the platform that you built that we'll hear more about later, I think is the latest and most important development in entrepreneurship, maybe in 20 years. Back to you.
Thank you so much. And I actually have more questions for you guys. This is so many golden nuggets. I'm going crazy here. I'm gonna go back to each and every one of you because I'm pretty sure that after hearing the comments of the others, you have some other stuff to add. Adriana, Bob was mentioning a lot about the skills of the entrepreneur. Jeff also talked about the entrepreneurs themselves. Jeff told amazing stories about the entrepreneurs, and you're basically heading one of the largest entrepreneur networks in the world in Santanderex. What do you take from all the messaging about the people and the passion and the MTP and the focus that you think is going to make a difference now that we have that access to technology, as Peter was saying, and all the possibility of this technology that is enabling globalization, as Roberto mentioned?
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you, everyone, because it's amazing. Even that you are an entrepreneur, that are coming out of emerging economy or based in a pretty well-developed economy, you're going to suffer or you're going to face the same challenges. So being, international, supported, and a very passionate entrepreneur, like I just described myself, I think now we have shown, examples or being from a very, very, not charming ecosystems and create a pretty disruptive technology as well in the market. So what we heard, around this presentation is that we can, keep working on even where you're based. If you really find your real passion and you are ready, you have all these skills, the mindset, and you're ready to take it to the next level, definitely the opportunity and the momentum is now. So I do believe, as Salim was exposing, is the next decade for the EXO companies. The scalability not only bring, a lot of wealth for the society and the local economy from the local to the global perspective, but also, I agree with the rest of my fellows that mentioned that entrepreneurship is about solving the biggest and the most urgent problems. So now with all the access of technology, allocation independency of demographic bonus, and all, being part of the digital economy in a global and well-connected world, we definitely have, the duty to take our passions and our capabilities and abilities to the next level and put it on the service of the rest of the actors of the ecosystem. So, understanding which role we are playing. I'm a huge fan of football because I'm married with Argentina and I'm from Mexico. So we're so passionate about, sports. So you must be ready to play, your role. Which role are playing, on the yard and take it to the next level, be sophisticated, we're ready, prepared, work like a team player and collaborate. I think those are the most, pressure asset value And as Peter was saying, the human capital is the most relevant and important, inflection point that we are facing right now in this 21st century. So entrepreneurship is not, a trend. It's not something that it's good to have. And not only inspirational in development countries and a pretty rich people. It's about who is doing the right things for the majority. So who are, solving the biggest problems, but also with working in collaborative way. So I'm so passionate to also recognize here that if we put at the center, of our perspective, mindset, and business model, like an actors of ecosystem, and entrepreneurs, and every one of the rest of the organization, governments, knowledge, education, universities, the rest of the actors play our role in the, game, we're gonna hit the goal to really have a very prosper, and human society in the upcoming years.
Thank you, Adriana. Bob, Adriana was mentioning a lot about the ecosystem, and you've been, for many years now, traveling the world as well, many places in America, but also abroad. And the thing about the skills, I think, and we've had this discussion before, when you do not have them and you have to get trained somewhere, or you need guidance from someone, it's challenging, especially if you're not from an advanced entrepreneurial ecosystem, because basically, and this is crucial, it doesn't really make that much sense to have someone guiding you that hasn't been there or hasn't done that yet, right? So how can they sort it out?
Right. And this is why I'm so focused on the glue, as I love to call it, creating networks of entrepreneurs, not so much for the EXOs, where they're important, but operate at a much, much higher level. One of my former students is the CEO of an advanced AI company. He has a truly global staff of 50 people at Grid AI, and 18 or 20 different countries, because he went to find the best ML engineers he could find, and anywhere he could find them in the world. But I focus much more on the 98% of the people who are never going to be able to build a unicorn, don't quite even know what one is. And I agree with what Salim and others have said about, you start with the problem. The root of any success is a problem. But if your problem is feeding your children and paying the rent for the roof over their heads, you think about the world entirely differently, and you look at entrepreneurship as perhaps a route out of that very serious, very pressing problem that is never going to grow up and fly like a unicorn. And so I think we have to remember that part of our obligation to global society is to make sure that whatever entrepreneurial ecosystem we have can reach out to the very, call it basic, or sometimes called Main Street or mom and pop entrepreneur, and help them with some of the simplest things. I spent a lot of time with Elmore Logan, a truck driver in Bridgeport, Connecticut, with 2 children and a working wife, who wanted to leave his truck driving job and start a trucking company. And he's ready to go out and borrow $100,000, which is probably 6 or 8 times his family asset base. I said, no, Elmore, can you take a month leave of absence and rent a truck and sort of start going to the drop, sort of see how this goes and see how it works, and then lease one for a month. And right now he's in final discussions with a banker about buying his first truck. He would have done that entirely the wrong way without the advice that any one of us in this panel and many hundreds of people on this Zoom call could have given him. We have to be available to meet him at his or her level to help them up in whatever they choose to focus on as their entrepreneurial journey. And the one other thing I want to add to this, which we haven't really talked about, one of the curses of our entrepreneurial ecosystem is that most of the time, venture capitalists and major investors want to give money to white guys who went to Harvard, Stanford, or maybe Columbia or Yale. And they ask different and ridiculous questions of female entrepreneurs. And they look differently at Black and brown entrepreneurs. And I am sure that that metaphor extends to many countries in the world, including, I saw it up front and personal, in Mexico. Based on where you came from, where you went to school, determine your viability as an entrepreneur, regardless of how good your idea was, how tenacious and talented you were. And we have to all focus on better balancing this so that it is not the 1% of entrepreneurs get the unicorns and all the glory, and more important, the support of the ecosystem and the members of it, and make sure that we are as generous with that as we can be. It's not charity, it's an investment in the future of our hometown or our ecosystem or our industry. And to me, it's one of the great real travesties of all the joys and money printing that's going on in the United States that I must confess I've enjoyed personally for more than a few decades. But we have to focus on that in every ecosystem we build.
I couldn't agree more. And I guess, Jeff, you that have been going so often to places like Africa and Asia, what's your take on this? Because as Roberto was saying before, these global inefficiencies of the market and these asymmetry that we see is, I think, a very inefficient way of building the startups and supporting the people that, as Bob was saying, basically enables them to move up in the Maslow pyramid. So what would we do about that? Is it about connecting countries? Is it about meeting investors from one place with founders from another one? What's your take on this? You're muted, Jeff.
There we go. It's about all of the above. It is about creating the opportunities and giving the exposure to those underrepresented founders. As an example, right now, I'm both executive producing and starring in a new television show that's about to come out called Going Public. It's like Shark Tank, except we're letting any viewer anywhere in the world invest in the companies, not the sharks. You don't need to watch Mark Cuban get wealthier and a small group of people that are already rich. What we've said was, why don't we introduce the investment opportunity to anybody, anywhere on the planet? We're the first show that's ever been approved for this. But equally importantly, we're taking public, it's called Going Public because we'll be airing the IPOs live from the NASDAQ. Let's see, the first company we picked is 2 minority females. The second one's 2 minority males. We're focusing on women, underrepresented founders. We've got Asian, Latina founders, Black founders. I guess the reason I'm telling you that is we're trying to do our part. Everybody needs to do their part to create opportunities for founders who are equally as intelligent, their ideas equally as good, if not better. But statistically and historically, they don't get the same level of opportunities that I do. My phone rings off the hook that people have another deal that they want me to get involved in. So the reason that we're doing things like this new show is, like I said, anybody anywhere in the world, you're welcome to invest. We'll teach you how to invest. And if you've got a great company, we'll feature your company. So I think my challenge to everybody is, everybody talks. As a matter of fact, behind that thing, I covered my whiteboard so it wouldn't be distracting. But all the sayings, I believe, are behind me. And one of them says, it used to be on my door, all my CEO years. It said, your ideas are welcome here, but execution is worshipped. Everybody talks about equality, diversity, inclusion, but what are you actually doing? So we're trying to do our part, and I'm challenging everybody to do the same. Do something. We understand that you can't by yourself level the playing field for underrepresented founders. Then pick one. Go find one. Go find two. Go find somebody. There is a reason, as you know, that at Gen, one year we held our global congress and we brought 172 countries to Medellin because we wanted to show Latin American entrepreneurs on a stage in front of the whole world. Everybody can do something. I guess I'll end with that. One of my all-time favorite Mother Teresa quotes, she said when being ridiculed because she was too small to save the world, she said, hey, if you can't feed 100 people, feed one. And I think if everybody takes that attitude into supporting one underrepresented founder, I think we can make a lot of progress quickly. Quit worrying about the fact that you can't save the world. Go save somebody. So I think it is time to take action as a community to bring more founders to the front than historically have had the opportunity.
Thank you, Jeff. Peter, you are in one of the most exciting industries and sectors in the world, which is basically any new gadget technology or anything that comes into the market. I mean, it's like a kid in a candy store, I think. We've had this conversation before, but I'd love the audience to hear your view. We now have access to the most exciting time in history. We have access to amazing technologies, but there's a big chunk of people out there that don't get a grasp of how viable is to access this kind of technology. We think that AI is some sci-fi movie kind of thing, even though we have the thing inside our phones and we use it every day. 3D printing, I mean, it's $100, but it also sounds like a movie or something. How can any kind of entrepreneur that is not studying a PhD in MIT or Stanford get the mindset of understanding that the technology is out there and they can reach out almost to any online store and get it?
So when I teach at Singularity University at my Abundance 360 program, which is our highest level year-round executive program at SU, I'm focusing on entrepreneurs on 4 mindsets. I think if you look at what made every major leader and entrepreneur successful on the planet, I don't think it was their technology. I don't think it was their money. I think it was their mindset, the way they saw the world. And if you took away all of their money, all of their tech, but you kept their mindset, they would regain their success. And so I'm constantly thinking about how do you shape an entrepreneur's mindset? You know, our brains, 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections. Our brains are giant neural nets. And our neural net is shaped by the information we bring into our eyes, our ears, who we hang out with, the conversations we have, what we watch on television. All of those things shape the way you think. And so most of us actually don't take the time to shape our thinking. And so I've become very focused on this as the most important thing I can do, help inspire entrepreneurs to think differently. And I think about, principally 5 mindsets: an abundance mindset. And it's the notion that every year there is more and more opportunity. It just is. There's more energy available, more capital, more access to food, water, healthcare, education. We might have small dips, but trajectory-wise, it's massive. We're dematerializing, demonetizing, and democratizing all of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Roberto, I'll take an extra 30 seconds. We are, an exponential mindset that technology is moving not faster, but it's accelerating. And those technologies are what you need to understand. And there are interfaces, there are platforms, there are software as a service, AI as a service, or you can find your partner who is a coding expert if you know the problem space. A longevity mindset that we're going to add 10, 20, 30 healthy years this life. And then a moonshot mindset that you can go 10 times bigger where the old world is going 10% bigger. And then finally, a purpose-driven mindset that you need to have purpose. Otherwise, doing anything big and bold in the world is hard. And you're going to give up if you don't have that emotional energy driving you, right? That's what we do at the X Prize. We've launched $300 million in prizes for entrepreneurs. I don't care where they went to school, what they've ever done. If they solve the problem, they win and the world wins. So anyway, it is an amazing time to be an entrepreneur.
Thank you, Peter. Roberto, you're a global connector. I mean, I've never met anyone with such an impressive contact book, and you've been meeting with people, developing amazing projects, from doing health stuff in an accelerator in Brazil to creating a VC focused only on space in New York. I mean, you're restless, and I guess for me, one of the biggest challenges of the global ecosystem is that we talk a lot about collaboration, and for me, there's a lot of noise in the environment about people collaborating. But truth is that whenever it comes down to really doing the stuff together and sharing the results, is not as simple as it sounds. So how can we start doing that kind of collaboration that everyone talks about?
So people are different, right? So we have a big empathy gap in the globe, understanding different realities, different countries, different mindsets. I think that's something that we should all do to do what you just mentioned, Peter. But let me share 3 quick ideas with you, and I'll get started with one example, and Peter will know about that. So a company called One Scheme, and Peter was with Carolina, the founder, the other day live. That's a good example. A company that was born, the entrepreneur is originally from Brazil. She has a deep tech background. She moved to the US. What's the point here? There's value that is not being created in the globe because there are some missing global connections. We can unleash value creation, connecting entrepreneurs with different ecosystems around the globe. And for sure, we can do that across nations. And as we're, let's say we're seeing different ecosystems maturing around the globe. We have Kaspi in Kazakhstan. I've been working in Kazakhstan. Their valuation is at 20 billion today. That's more than 10% of the GDP of the country. But you can unleash value creation, connecting entrepreneurs with different geographies across the globe. So disrupting geography. The second thing is that we surely need to uplift local innovation ecosystems, and I cannot agree more with Bob that we need to think about the full spectrum. One final idea here, Peter, because I think it connects to what you had mentioned before about connecting how to do that, is the need to connect entrepreneurs with policy. The more innovative, complex, deep tech stuff, the more you need to interact with institutions, regulation, or you will be bounded by that. So it's part of an entrepreneurial journey to shape institutions in some way. And we need to close that gap. There's a problem. Cockroaches don't have a reputation or have bad reputations. So entrepreneurs lack social capital, and they usually don't have voice in policy. So we need to be sure that we are creating the spaces for them to have. I fully agree with Peter. Everything starts on the mind.
Thank you, Roberto. Salim, what's your take on comments of the others? I mean, you created a community of more than 8,000 experts in innovation and technology. It's kind of like the hippiest high tech I've ever heard, and it's amazing community. 113 countries. How can you build such a thing and then have everyone pitching in, doing stuff like the foresights you're working on right now, with the idea of this amazing purpose of transforming stuff? Does everything come from the MTP? I've been reading a lot about Stephen Kotler lately, and basically what he says is that it starts from there and then everything transforms. What's your view?
Yeah, Peter talks about this a lot. If you're going to take on a challenge, and let's face it, being an entrepreneur is a path to crazy. You have to be crazy before you begin, and it'll make you crazy along the way, and then you're crazy at the back end. There's also the dark side of the mental stress that comes with entrepreneurs who are very lonely. It's hard to talk to your shareholders, etc. You really need a support system, and that's partly the work that Jeff and Bob and all of us are trying to do over the years, is get entrepreneurs as much help, because they're the ones that are doing the hard work of transformation. And let's face it, the world needs transformation. The policy side that Roberto mentions is absolutely critical, because one of the reasons I think it's the U.S. has been so successful is that it's relatively easy if you fail a company for you to shut the company down, right? I built a subsidiary for one of my companies in India, which is where I'm from originally. And when the company parentship failed, it took me 7 years to shut down the subsidiary. It's 7 years. Am I likely to do another one there? No, not a hope in hell, because the shutting down costs are too high. Whereas if you make it easy for people to wind down, and this is the biggest secret that you could give to governments, is make it easy for people to fail. In most parts of the world, if you build a business and you fail, you're a failure. The reason Silicon Valley is successful is that if you build a business and you fail, we call it experience, right? And that's a very different model for how to think about the world. And Peter talks about mindsets. If governments could have that mindset, then it would unleash an unbelievable amount of innovation, creativity into their local ecosystems. The good news is that with the rise of crypto and all of the other dynamics going on, it's now easier than ever for anybody to go build a virtual environment. I've been playing around with NFTs, and it's just unbelievable to see the global participation of kids around the world being part of this new kind of movement in a way that they don't have to ask for permission for anything of anybody. They just need a mobile phone and internet access, and that's coming to everybody. So that gives me enormous optimism for the world. Also per the exponential technology side, we now have a dozen technologies that are growing exponentially. Drones are doubling every 9 months in their capability. So if you layer a solution on that, the solution doubles with the underlying technology, and you connect the gumption with the technology, with the access to and the low cost of technology, pretty much anything's possible, which is why all of us are so bubbly excited about the potential in the future of entrepreneurship.
Thank you for that. And by the way, just hearing you now, I had a conversation a few years back with Ryan Babino, the guy who wrote Fail Fast, Fail Often. Amazing guy. And because of the conversation, we created an award called Kintsugi based on the Japanese vessels. And it was about celebration of failure, because we've seen that as a big challenge, especially in countries that do not have that kind of push for creating stuff new and being an entrepreneur. And actually, one of the awardees of the first edition is here in the call. It was Adriana Tortajada. At the time, she was basically the second in command of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Mexico. An amazing career. But what would anyone in the call, because I think this is a question for all you guys, what's your take on failure culture and pivoting and that kind of stuff? I think it's one of the big barriers that we face in the world. I am Mexican, and where I come from, basically, if you fail, you're ticketed as a loser for the rest of your life, and you don't even have time to lick your wounds or think about the next step. It's simply you're done.
Yeah, let me throw out a quick idea here. This is for everybody in all of the countries in the world. You should start an awards ceremony where every year you pick 3 entrepreneurs that took the biggest risks and failed, and put them on TV, have them shake the president or prime minister's hand and recognize that. And it'll change the cultural narrative towards failure. Because then you'll reward the attempt, the taking of risk, and the gumption that it took to step out and do something crazy. Because in most of the world, if you stand up and say you want to change the world, the rest of society pulls you back down. It takes an extraordinary amount of courage, and we should reward that courage.
Hey, Salim?
Yeah.
I not only totally agree, but an interesting experience that I was giving a talk in Asia. It was actually Korea, but to thousands of people, and people kept raising their hands saying, Jeff, that's fine to be an entrepreneur in other parts of the world, but you can't do it here because of the Asian shame on failing. And I said, you know why it's shameful to fail where you're part of the world? And they said, why? And I said, because you keep saying that. You want to know how to fix this problem? Stop saying that. And after, I just want to say, after I left, this group of young Asians came to my hotel at midnight and said, can you get dressed and come out? And I went down to like the pizza joint with them. There was several hundred of them. And they said, we just want you to know that youth around the world, now that we're all connected online and have spoken to each other, we're not buying that crap anymore. We do not believe there's a shame in failure. We watch people in other cultures start businesses, fail, recover, and build a better one. So there is good news out there. Yeah. The generation of people who keep saying that failure is shameful are literally ending their reign, and the young people don't believe it. To your point, we've got to all stand up and keep repeating that. Failure means trying, and trying is the only way we're ever going to have progress.
Well, and failure brings learning, which is why I always call it, it's not a failure if you fail up. If you, okay, well, that didn't work, let me try this. That's what good entrepreneurs do, and we have to applaud that.
And may I, some funny anecdote, when we were launching the first woman, founder tech Latin community from Miami to the world, it was actually led by Susana Garcia Robles and Marta Cruz. We exchanged, platform. So at the end of the event, these ladies were pretty clever to, give us, everyone in the audience, a permission to fail. It was like a certificate, like a diploma. It was with all, the different issues that you can print it there, pretty fashion, pretty good. So you can put it on the wall, and it was with your name on it. And, the first thing, and because we were talking about the underrepresented, communities, of course, woman is one of the major ones and the different ones. So that was back 2001 or 2, I remember quite well. But imagine, it was a group, I don't know, out of 30 female founders, venture capitalists, and ecosystem builders across the Ibero-America, launching from Miami, this, permission to fail. So for me, it was really relevant to say, come on, I have to take, more actions and a more relevant role to really transform my, ecosystem, to really give visibility to all the ones that have, given their life for pursuing their dreams and the passions and solution to the biggest problems. So that take me to the next level and become a pioneer to launching a lot of stuff and building bridges, not only for Mexico, Latin America, South America, US with, Europe and Asia, and also bring the first Startup Nation Summit to America, which it was Mexico, the hosting city, when no one was believing, any attribute of the brand Mexico, an additional of tequila, mariachi, sombreros. It was in science and technology innovation business models for entrepreneurship. So the Global Entrepreneurship Network, finally, I pitched them at Milan. I remember, guys, why you keep running these sectors in Asia? You have a close neighbor, which is Mexico. Let's bring it to Mexico. So first time ever, more than 65 countries out of, I was 2005, Pedro, I don't remember quite well the year. The year before, Jeff mentioned to bring the Global Ecosystem Congress to Colombia, as Mexico bring the Startup Nation Summit. So it was like the secret rule for the ecosystem when everybody, came down, have a lot of connectivity, bilingual people, well-educated, more, graduated engineers than US, and the second largest economy in the region. So sometimes you need to, improve your sales pitch, have more, attributes for your own brand and your local brand, and to become more relevant actor in the global ecosystem. So I love the failure, anecdotes, because definitely we need to failure up, as Bob was saying, every time. Everybody learn from it.
If I may add something
Adriana.
very quick here,
Yep.
Pedro, I want to include a different twist here. I think there are two different things when we talk about failure. One is values and beliefs, what we call culture, right? And how the perception, we need to change, we need to shift that. I very much support what Salim has said and that idea. The other thing, it's about the material, concrete reality of life. What do I mean? There are places in the globe, if you fail, you have debt. You will not have access to credit. You will have legal liabilities. So in order to change the game, we need to improve those legal frameworks around the globe, right? For sure, there are things we could address through global connections, but we need to address both values, beliefs, but also that can actually kill someone. Just to finish on a high note, this week, we had the first ever Series A funding round in Latin America, right? In spite of all the problems, two guys who came out of Singularity, one of them was together with me in 2013, so they raised 39 million for a pre-operational company down in Brazil.
Thank you, Roberto. Peter, I was wondering, especially about all the stuff that you've been doing lately, if you have any recommendation for any entrepreneur that wants to pioneer into going into new technology, deep tech, something kind of like a lab, or maybe someone that is in a lab but wants to become an entrepreneur, because as you know, that specific space between science and business, it's kind of difficult. What would be like the first thing you would suggest?
Make sure there's a business. The challenge is a lot of entrepreneurs become enamored with the tech, the cool thing they've built, the cool scientific discovery they've had, and they end up trying to raise money to develop it further and ultimately to find a market. And it's backwards, right? There really must be a focus on what is the problem you're trying to solve. Become an expert in the problem. And the technology is always changing, right? We're in the 5th or 6th generation of computational power, then will come quantum computing, and the technologies are constantly changing. If you're an expert in the problems don't change that fundamentally, right? So if you're an expert in the need for higher quality protein in India, or an expert in whatever it is, understanding that is critically important. I like to say the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities, right? So become the expert in the problem. And then once you understand it, then figure out what technology to go after. So, I mean, it's just fundamentally that basic. Fall in love with the problem. Be passionate about the problem, and everything else will follow.
Thank you, Peter.
I would add one
Jeff,
thought to
yes,
that, which is you, the entrepreneur, do not get to define either the problem or the solution. And the mantra of the lean startup method, you have to get out of the building, and talk to the people with the problem, get their ideas on your solution's value or lack of value, and bring that learning forward to your team, to your investors, and let the customer be the co-developer of your solution. It's typically the greatest route to refining the business model, finding the mistakes before you spend $5 million to launch on television or whatever, and get out of the building on a continuous basis. And we have to make that a part of the culture of virtually every entrepreneur, not just the people working on the big unicorn problems.
Thank you, Bob. I couldn't agree more. And Jeff, how does an entrepreneur from probably not like a very sophisticated urban area find a problem? How do they start? Is it about analyzing local stuff? Is it about the out of the building process that Bob was mentioning, or what's the starting point for them?
It's funny because I tell them all the time, in those countries, the world around you can't stop presenting you problems. Everything you do is a problem. And what they get used to is just working around it, even though they find themselves complaining. One of the things I always tell, and I completely agree with Bob, the part of the reason I'm in a different country every week is because I'm never in my office. I don't learn much sitting in this chair. I learn it when I'm out in the world, engaged with people and observing problems. So I constantly tell people this: next time you hear yourself, I'm going to give you a really fast example, complaining about a problem, stop and say, is this a big problem where I live? Just where you live. You don't have to solve, it doesn't have to be global tomorrow and on sale in the US. Is it a big problem where I live? If the answer is yes, then is when you go, as Peter said, to now you pick a technology. Is there a way to solve this problem better than it's being solved today? And then the third piece, I tell them to ask, so is it a real problem for a lot of people? Is there probably a way to do it better? And the third thing is there a value equation? And all that means is, will a lot of people in the world pay you more to fix this problem than it costs you to fix it? By the way, if not, congratulations, you have a hobby. If hobbies are things you spend your money to do, if people will pay you to fix it, you got a business. I'm going to give you a really quick example. I was in the streets in Cairo with some young entrepreneurs who were trying to go back to their little office. And if you've ever been with 20 million of your closest friends in cars in Cairo, it takes an hour to cross the street. And they were standing there complaining about it. And I said, if everybody here complains about it, why don't you just do something? So cut to the chase, they created an app that is used by 60 million people. It's the equivalent of Waze, but Waze was created later in Israel. This app was created in Egypt by some guys standing on the corner complaining about traffic. And it's a consumer, it's a people-driven input product that everybody in the Middle East uses now. When you're standing in the middle of the problem and instead of complaining about it, stop and own it. That's the difference between the world's most successful entrepreneurs and everyone else. They weren't smarter than you. They just owned the problem.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a lovely story. Peter, we're going to start closing comments. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Anything you want to tell the audience or the panelists?
To the audience, the panelists know everything already. To the audience, again, I think entrepreneurship is the highest art form. It is a creative art form. It is an art form that makes the world a better place, and it's one of the most fulfilling art forms. So, if that's something that's in your heart and your soul, go for it. Don't do anything just to make money. That's an empty road ahead. Do it because you feel like it brings value to your life and the value to the people that you love. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Peter. It was lovely having you here.
A pleasure, and I apologize. I have to drop to get my 2 10-year-old boys from school on time. But thank you all. Bye now.
Thank you.
Those
Bye.
are the important things in life.
Yes, it is.
Bye.
Bye. Jeff, can you share with us a few closing comments?
Yeah, I'll make it really, really quick. And it's just that do something somewhere. Someone around you where you live, there is a problem where you are. There is a person that would love to make it better if only they knew how. In the 190 countries we work in, the single most common phrase I hear is, I have an idea how to make things better. I just don't know where to start. So for every one of us on this call, be a mentor. You either need to be an entrepreneur or help one, but those are your only 2 choices. Find someone in your community that wants to make it better and help them make it better.
Thank you, Jeff. Adriana, any final closing comments?
It has been quite a pleasure to share, ideas and vision and perspective, and see, a lot of similarities, be among us. So thank you, Pedro, really for the vision to, now I understand why you choose us and why you put us on the spot to share our ideas, our passions, our strengths, and our, keep and constantly work and discipline, and how we can really, think every day, how we can help more entrepreneurs achieve a successful or take their businesses to the next level, or their solutions. Or, I've seen a lot of, entrepreneurs losing all they have, all the actives and their marriage, the houses, and even that they start over again. So for that, my life, it will be dedicated to really, build bridges, build platforms, create solutions, mentor, give access, give visibility to the ones that are thinking and how to, solve the biggest problems for the majority of the people. For that, the entrepreneurial movement takes all my respect. I think everyone can play a pretty relevant role, from the spot they are. Even if you are not, I haven't been a successful entrepreneur, so I become an intrapreneur. So I'm so good at connecting people. I'm so good, to, taking advantage of the platform and the places that I have been, to ask questions, to, pursue people to do the things that they haven't thought it were useful for the entrepreneurial world. So, take your talent to the next level. And I think, that will definitely impact the next generations eventually.
Thank you, Adriana.
At grave, well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob, please.
I was just going to say, at grave personal risk, I would like to debate something Jeff Hoffman said. I don't think any of us as entrepreneurs have a choice between being a mentor and being an entrepreneur. We should all be able to find a few hours a week to pay it forward, to help the next generation, to teach some little bit of what we've learned to the next man or woman, to help them build something great on it as well.
Bob, you now have my vote for mayor. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Me too.
Thank you, Bob. It was amazing to have you here, and also thank you for being such an active participant in all the stuff that we've been working for the last, I don't even know how many years, especially in Latin America.
I feel like I've been doing my capstone program. It's been the most exciting, rewarding decade of my 50 years of entrepreneurship, and sharing it all over the world, and with this esteemed group of colleagues, sharing it even broader. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and get ready for the next decade with Salim and the Exos. So it's gonna get even better. Roberto, would you like to share any closing comments?
Thank you, Pedro. The first is that entrepreneurs build the future again. So, and there's value that we're not creating because we're not doing what we could do to support entrepreneurs locally and globally. The second thing is, I'll steal something from one of my favorite chairman in the Global Federation, Chad Holliday, that is act local, resource global. So I think that acting in these two levels fundamental to drive the future of entrepreneurship. And finally, we need all hands on deck. You asked me how to do that. Be open, be empathetic. We need entrepreneurs, we need policy folks, we need corporate leaders, we need entrepreneurs, we need universities. We need to work across the spectrum to improve local and global realities. And thank you, Peter, for inviting me. Thank you all here. I've been learning from you throughout my life. It's a pleasure to be here.
Salim, can you share a few closing comments, please?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of and coming out of a pandemic, and I think this pandemic has given us unbelievable opportunities. I would suggest that if it wasn't for the entrepreneurs over the last 5 years creating Zoom and Uber Eats and Postmates and all of the things that made things easy, we wouldn't have survived the pandemic anywhere nearly as well, right? So the kind of this latest batch of EXOs over the last few years has helped us navigate this pandemic and make it a little more livable. Two quick stories, and I want to go back to what Bob said at the beginning about the tenacity that's needed. I think that's the fundamentally important characteristic. If I had to pick one, I remember when researching EXO, when Larry and Sergey went out to do investor presentations to raise money for Google, there was a dozen search engines. They did 352 investor presentations before they got funded, right? What if they'd stopped at 340? How many others stopped just before the pitch that got them funded? And so that tenacity is absolutely critical. And I'll go touch on the mindset comment that Peter had. A few years ago, The Economist had their annual Innovators Awards, and I was one of the judges, and Elon Musk was given an award. So I was chatting with him at the bar, and I said, Elon, you want to go in the Hyperloop, had just been announced. I said, you want to go in the Hyperloop from LA to San Francisco in 20 minutes at 4,000 miles an hour. I have a degree in theoretical physics. If you accelerate a human being from 0 to 4,000 miles and back to 0 in 20 minutes, you're probably going to kill them. His response was, yeah, it's an issue. And that's the mindset, right? For most of us, this is a showstopper. Stop the program, stop all of that. He's like, yeah, it's a speed bump we have to overcome. And that mindset is really, really critical, because everybody will tell you no. In fact, the task of being an entrepreneur means breaking down 500 no's around you, that you can't do this, that business model won't work, that pricing won't work, that market segment doesn't exist, that you can't raise the money, you're not credible enough, you're not good looking enough, you're not tall enough, you're not smart enough, whatever. I think that tenacity is the fundamental characteristic. And I'll go back to Steve Blank, the other kind of godfather of all of this, along with Bob, who remember him saying that if almost all entrepreneurs move somewhere else, and that demonstration of moving somewhere else shows that you're ready to take on other things. And almost all of us have moved to different places to be really crazy, because if you're crazy at home, they kill you. So better to go somewhere else and be crazy. So
I had a call today with an entrepreneur with his 2 teenage sons in the back seat of the station wagon, moving his family from from North Carolina to Oklahoma, because the funder said, we will give you all the money, but we want you down the street from us, not across the country.
Yeah.
Not sure if his wife is in the car. I hope she is. She's a very supportive entrepreneurial spouse. Teenagers, you never know.
It's tough, but that's what it takes. And that's why, as Roberto says, we need much better support from our families, but from the policy side, my God.
Yeah. I think that's one last point for the government people on this call. I've seen it in Colombia. I've seen it beginning in Mexico, and even in Latvia. Government has to get the hell out of the way and make it easier. In Colombia, you used to have to go to 11 different offices, several of which you had to bring your accountant or lawyer in order to start a business. It was like a month's work to do the paperwork. And Colombia, the government said, we got to fix this. They created one room with 11 desks in it, and you could get in and out with no counsel in a day. Not perfect, right? You can do this online in Connecticut in about an hour, but probably less. Anyway, so governments, think about how you can make it easier for these entrepreneurs to accept modest amounts of initial funding, to exempt them from 20 pounds of regulations until they have 3 employees or $100,000 in revenue. Don't be an accelerant, not a barrier to entrepreneurial success.
I agree, and thank you for the comment, Bob. And on that note, we gotta end. I appreciate you guys sharing 10 more minutes that we originally asked for. This was brilliant, probably one of the best conversations I've ever had in my life, so I'm happy it was recorded. I hope to see you again soon. And for everyone still watching and connected, we have a few more hours to go so that we can share with you what's going to happen within the Open Exo community and the Exo Builder ecosystem that we're launching as of today. So just stay tuned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Pedro.
Thank you. Thanks, Pedro.
Great moderation, Pedro. Great to be here. Bye.
Yeah.